Tonight you'll hear the story of a man who never lost a battle, a man who believed he was the son of a god and died at just 32. His name was Alexander. The world remembers him as Alexander the Great. At Gaugamela, outnumbered 5-1, Alexander mounted his horse Bucephalus and charged straight into the heart of the Persian army. One reckless move could have ended everything before it began. Did his empire die the moment it was born? But Alexander's story is more than a single charge. From taming an untamable horse at 12, to cutting the Gordian knot with his sword, to burning Persepolis in a drunken firestorm, he lived as if every day were carved into legend. He could be cruel, crucifying thousands in victory, and yet he spared royal families and dreamed of uniting East and West. He crowned himself Pharaoh in Egypt, declared himself a living god, and spread his name across 20 cities. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, let the clash of spears fade into your breathing, let the rhythm of hooves soften into your dreams. Tonight you'll drift through 20 of the most outrageous, shocking, and unforgettable truths about Alexander the Great, the conqueror who became a myth and whose shadow still falls across history. It's October 1st, 331 BCE. The sun is just starting to rise over the dusty plains of Gaugamela, in what's now northern Iraq. A young man sits on a massive black horse, staring at an ocean of enemy soldiers that stretches as far as he can see. His name is Alexander, king of Macedon, and he's about to do something incredibly stupid. The numbers are a nightmare. Alexander has maybe 47,000 troops. Across from him, the Persian Emperor Darius III has assembled somewhere between 200,000 to 250,000 soldiers. That's 5-1 odds, maybe worse. Darius has war elephants. He has chariots with spinning blades attached to their wheels. He has cavalry from every corner of his massive empire. He picked this flat, open ground on purpose. It's perfect for his huge army. Alexander's generals have a plan, a smart plan: attack at night, use darkness to hide their smaller numbers. But Alexander says no. He wants Darius to see him coming. He wants everyone to watch what happens next. Here's what's about to go down. This 25-year-old king is going to charge straight at the centre of the Persian line. Not from the side, not with some clever trick. Straight into the biggest army the ancient world has ever seen. His top general, Parmenion, looks sick. This old warrior fought for Alexander's father. He knows this isn't strategy, this is suicide. Put yourself in Alexander's shoes for a second. You're barely 25, you've been king for only 5 years. Everyone said invading Persia was crazy. Your kingdom was nearly broke when you started. You had to sell royal property just to pay for this war. Sure, you've beaten Persian armies twice before, but this is Darius himself with the full power of an empire that's ruled for 200 years. What's going through Alexander's mind? He's not thinking about the odds. He's not thinking about retreat. He's thinking about destiny, about gods, about a question that's haunted him his whole life. Is he really just the son of Philip, the one-eyed king of Macedon, or is he something more? Think about it like this. Imagine growing up with your mum constantly telling you that your real father isn't who everyone thinks. Except she's not talking about some secret affair. She's saying your actual dad is Zeus, king of the gods. That's been Alexander's entire life. His mother Olympias, a woman who slept with snakes as part of her weird religious practices, told him from day one that Zeus came to her as lightning and made her pregnant. Morning light bounces off thousands of Persian spear points. Darius sits in his war chariot at the centre, surrounded by his royal guard called the Immortals. He's wearing purple robes and a golden crown. He looks like a god king. Alexander wears a simple helmet with a white plume. No fancy robes, just armor that's been in real fights. But here's the problem with thinking you're the son of a god. You can't fail, you can't show weakness, you can't play it safe, because if you're divine, the gods will protect you, right? And if you're not, then everything you believe about yourself is garbage. Before this battle even started, Alexander killed animals to read signs from the gods. He made offerings to Zeus, to Athena, to every god who supposedly loves him. The priests said the omens looked good. Of course they did. What else are they going to tell a king who thinks he's immortal? Alexander turns to his companion cavalry. These are his elite horsemen who followed him from Macedonia across mountains and deserts. They're not just soldiers, they're friends, nobles, guys who've known him since he was a kid. Some of them remember when he was just Philip's strange son with the crazy mother. Now they're supposed to believe he's half god. Now they're supposed to follow that half-god into what looks like certain death. He raises his arm. Bucephalus, his huge black horse, shifts under him. This horse is old now, maybe 20 years. That's ancient for a war horse. But the animal knows what's coming. Alexander has ridden this beast since he was 12, since the day he tamed a horse everyone said couldn't be ridden. Was that god power? Or just a smart kid who figured out the horse was scared of its own shadow? Alexander starts moving his cavalry slightly to the right. Not straight ahead, a little to the side. The Persians shift to match him. He goes further right. They shift more. He's stretching their line, pulling it out of shape, creating a gap. But to make that gap, he has to get closer. Closer to those blade-covered chariots. Closer to those elephants. Closer to that sea of spears that wants to kill him. The weight of being special crushes down on Alexander. Every battle, every choice, every second of his life gets measured against this impossible standard. Son of Zeus, destined to rule the world, protected by gods. But gods don't bleed, gods don't die, gods don't screw up. Alexander is about to find out which one he really is. The moment hits. Alexander kicks Bucephalus hard. The great horse explodes forward. Behind him, 5,000 cavalry charge. They're aiming for that gap, driving straight at Darius himself. The Persian chariots launch. Blades spin. Horses scream. Some of Alexander's foot soldiers open their ranks to let the chariots pass through harmlessly. Then they close up again. Other soldiers aren't so lucky. Bodies fall. But Alexander doesn't slow down. He's at the very front, his spear pointed forward, aiming for the heart of the Persian Empire. Is he the son of Zeus, protected by heaven itself? Or is he just a kid pretending to be a god, about to die for believing his mother's lies? What happens in the next few minutes decides everything. Does Alexander become ruler of the known world? Or does he become just another dead king who believed his own hype? Does the charge work? Does Darius stand and fight? Does Alexander's empire die before it really begins? We'll find out, but not yet, because to understand this insane moment, to really get what's pushing Alexander toward those Persian spears, we need to go back, way back, to when he was just a 12-year-old boy facing an animal that had thrown every grown man who tried to ride it. The year is 343 BCE. We're in Pella, capital of Macedon, a rough kingdom in northern Greece that civilized Greeks think is barely better than barbarians. A horse dealer named Philonacus has just arrived with an animal he swears is worth 13 talents. That's 340 pounds of silver. In today's money, close to $500,000 for one horse. King Philip comes out to look. Philip has one eye, lost the other in battle. He's tough, scarred, and not someone you cheat. The horse is massive, jet black, powerful. The kind of animal that could carry a king into battle and crush anyone in its way. Then the problems start. Philonacus brings out his best handlers. Men who've broken hundreds of horses. They approach carefully. The horse rears up, front hooves slashing air. One handler grabs for the bridle. The horse spins and nearly kicks his skull in. Another tries from the side, same thing. This beast is absolutely wild. Handler after handler fails. The horse isn't just unridden, it's unrideable. Philip's getting angry. He tells Philonicus to take the animal and leave. No deal. The dealer looks crushed. That's a fortune walking away. A kid's voice cuts through the crowd.
Father, what a horse they're losing. All because they don't have the skill or courage to handle him.
That's Alexander. 12 years old, skinny, shaggy hair. Just a prince watching from the sidelines. Philip turns and stares at his son like he just claimed he could fly. Philip's voice drips sarcasm. Are you finding fault with your elders? Think you could do better? Picture this. You're 12. Your dad is the king. He just called you out in front of his entire court. Every noble in Macedon is watching. Your mum spent your whole life saying you're special, destined the son of Zeus. But right now you're just a kid who opened his mouth too big. Alexander doesn't back down.
I could manage this horse better than they have.
Dead silence. Philip stares. This is either genius or stupidity, probably both. The king decides to teach his arrogant son a lesson. And if you fail, what will you pay for being so bold? Alexander doesn't blink.
I'll pay the whole price of the horse.
The kid just bet 13 talents, money he doesn't have, more than most people see in 10 lifetimes. Philip probably thinks the universe is about to humble his cocky son. He agrees. Alexander walks toward the horse. Everyone expects him to do what the handlers did. Grab hard, use force, show dominance. He does something completely different. He's been watching. Really watching. Every time the horse reared up, it faced the same direction, away from its shadow. The horse isn't vicious, it's terrified of its own shadow. Alexander sees what trained adults missed. He takes the bridle gently, turns the horse toward the sun. Now the shadow falls behind it out of sight. The animal calms immediately. Alexander strokes its neck, talks softly. We don't know what he says, but the horse's ears swivel toward him. It's listening. Then Alexander throws off his cloak. In one motion he grabs the mane and swings onto the horse's back. No saddle, no armor, just a 12-year-old boy on a massive warhorse that's thrown every adult who tried. The horse stands still. 1 heartbeat, 2, then it moves, not bucking, not rearing, it runs. Alexander lets it gallop full speed across the field, leaning forward, letting this terrified animal realize the shadow isn't chasing anymore. They disappear. The crowd holds its breath. The horse could throw him at this speed and snap his neck. Minutes pass, then they see them returning. Alexander sits tall, the horse responding to his commands. Philip stands there with tears on his face. This one-eyed warrior king is crying. He looks at his 12-year-old son. My boy, you must find a kingdom big enough for your ambitions. Macedon is too small for you. Something shifts in Alexander's world right then. Maybe his mother was right. Maybe he is different. Special. Because what just happened shouldn't be possible. A child seeing what adults couldn't. A boy succeeding where experienced men failed. That's not normal. That's not luck. That's either brilliance or divine favour. And when you're 12 and you've just done the impossible, it's hard not to believe it might be both. Alexander names the horse Bucephalus, ox head, for its broad forehead. That horse becomes his companion for 20 years. Through every battle, every conquest, every impossible victory. Was it destiny? Or just a smart kid who paid attention? Alexander will spend his life trying to answer that. And that question will drive him to prove himself again and again. But right now he's just a boy who won a bet and made his father cry. A boy starting to believe he's meant for something bigger than Macedon. How much bigger, though? What does destiny look like when you're convinced you're half God? And what happens when that belief makes you reckless enough to charge into real combat before you're old enough to grow a beard? It's 338 BCE. Alexander is 16 years old. Most 16-year-olds are worrying about impressing girls or learning a trade. Alexander is standing on a battlefield in central Greece, about to command the cavalry wing of his father's army against the combined forces of Athens and Thebes. Let's be clear about what this means. Athens and Thebes are the military powerhouses of Greece. Athens has the legendary navy. Thebes has the sacred band, an elite unit of 300 warriors who've never been defeated. These aren't farmers with pitchforks. These are professional soldiers who've trained their entire lives for war. And Philip just put his teenage son in charge of the cavalry, the most important, most dangerous position in the battle line. The place is called Cheronea. It's a narrow valley with mountains on one side and a river on the other, perfect for a trap. The Greek alliance has positioned themselves across the valley. They outnumber Philip's Macedonians. They have better armour, better weapons, and they're fighting for their freedom because Philip wants to conquer all of Greece. Alexander sits on Bucephalus, now a fully grown warhorse. The animal is massive, battle-trained, and just as bold as its rider. Around Alexander are the companion cavalry, elite Macedonian nobles. These men have fought in dozens of battles. They've killed more men than Alexander has probably even met. And now they're supposed to take orders from a kid who's never seen real combat. Some of them are probably thinking this is a disaster. Philip's letting sentiment cloud his judgment. You don't give command to your son just because he's your son. You give it to someone who won't get everyone killed. But here's what they don't know yet. Philip isn't being sentimental. He's been training Alexander for this since the boy could walk. Aristotle taught him philosophy and tactics. Philip taught him war. And that moment with Bucephalus 4 years ago, that showed Philip something crucial. His son sees things others miss. The battle starts with Philip doing something weird. He orders his infantry to retreat, just back up slowly, like they're losing. The Athenians see this and go crazy. They think they're winning. They surge forward, breaking formation, chasing what looks like a retreating enemy. That's when the trap springs. Philip's infantry suddenly stops retreating and slams into the disorganized Athenians. At the exact same moment, Alexander gets his order. Charge the Theban left flank, charge the sacred band. Think about what's running through Alexander's head. He's dreamed about this his whole life. Every story about Achilles, every sacrifice to the gods, every whispered promise from his mother that he's destined for greatness. It all comes down to this moment. Either he's everything he believes himself to be, or he's about to die, proving he was just a delusional kid. Alexander raises his spear, Bucephalus rears, and they charge. The companion cavalry thunders forward, 300 horsemen hitting the Theban line like a hammer. Alexander is at the front, always at the front, because if you claim to be the son of Zeus, you can't lead from the back. The impact is brutal. Horses smash into shields, spears punch through armour, men scream, the sacred band doesn't break. There are the best warriors in Greece, they lock shields and hold, so Alexander does what 16-year-olds do when the safe plan doesn't work. He goes completely insane. He drives Bucephalus deeper into the Theban line. His spear breaks, he draws his sword. The companions follow because what else can they do? Their prince is in the middle of enemy territory, fighting for his life. Around him, grown warriors are trying to kill this teenager, experienced soldiers who've survived years of combat. Alexander fights like he has nothing to lose, maybe because he doesn't. His entire identity is wrapped up in being special, being chosen. If he fails here, If he runs or dies like a normal person, then everything was a lie. His mother's stories, his father's tears, the god's favour, all lies. So he doesn't fail. He can't. He cuts down a Theban officer, then another. Bucephalus kicks and bites. The horse is as violent as its rider. The companions push deeper, following Alexander's lead, and something impossible starts to happen. The sacred band begins to crack. Not because they're weak, because this crazy 16-year-old won't stop. He's everywhere, sword flashing, horse wheeling, and his men feed off that energy. They fight harder because their prince is fighting harder. The Theban line breaks. The sacred band, undefeated for decades, shatters under the charge of a teenage boy and his cavalry. They don't just lose, they get destroyed. Out of 300 men, 254 die right there on the field. The rest are too wounded to fight. When the dust settles, Philip has won the battle. He's conquered Greece, but everyone knows who really won it. They know who broke the unbreakable unit. They know which 16-year-old just announced to the world that he's not playing games. After the battle, Philip rides over to Alexander. His son is covered in blood and dust, probably has a dozen wounds he doesn't even feel yet because the adrenaline is still pumping. Philip looks at this boy who just commanded men twice his age and won. The king doesn't say much, he doesn't need to. Alexander just proved everything Philip suspected since the moment with the horse. His son isn't normal. Whether it's the gods or genetics or pure insane courage, the boy has something that can't be taught. But here's the dark side of that victory. Alexander now knows he can do this. He knows he can lead men into death and come out the other side. He knows the rush of combat, the high of victory, the intoxication of proving he's special. And that's a dangerous thing for a 16-year-old to learn, especially one who already believes he's half god. Because if you win your first battle, you start to think you'll win them all. If the gods protect you once, you assume they'll protect you forever. Alexander walks off that battlefield changed. He came in as a boy trying to prove himself. He leaves as a warrior who thinks he's invincible. And the scary thing? Based on what just happened, maybe he is, but being invincible makes you reckless. And being reckless when you're next in line to be king, that's a recipe for disaster. Especially when your father might not be around much longer to keep you in check. It's 336 BCE. Aigai, the old capital of Macedon. Philip is throwing the wedding of the century. His daughter Cleopatra is marrying Alexander of Epirus, her uncle. Weird by our standards, but royal families kept power by keeping it in the family. Philip is on top of the world. He conquered Greece. He's planning to invade Persia, but there's poison under the surface. Philip recently married wife number 7 or 8, a Macedonian girl named Cleopatra Eurydice, pure Macedonian blood. At a recent feast, her uncle got drunk and prayed Philip would produce a legitimate heir with this new wife. Right there, in front of everyone, including Alexander. The message was clear. Alexander, son of the foreign Olympias, wasn't quite legitimate. Alexander threw his cup at the uncle. Philip drew his sword and came at his own son. The drunk king took one step and face planted. Alexander stood over him. This man's preparing to cross from Europe to Asia. He can't even make it from one couch to another. Alexander left, took his mother and got out of Macedon. The damage was done. Now it's the wedding day. The theatre at Aigai is packed. Philip decides to enter without bodyguards. Show everyone he's untouchable, white ceremonial robe, no armour, no weapons. One of his bodyguards is named Pausanias. Young, handsome, trusted. But Pausanias has a grudge. Years ago he killed another of Philip's companions in a dispute. The dead man's friend Attalus, uncle of Philip's new wife, decided to punish Pausanias, got him drunk, let his servants gang rape him, made sure everyone knew. Pausanias begged Philip for justice. Philip wouldn't touch Attalus. Too connected. Family now, so Philip gave Pausanias a promotion and some money, told him to get over it. Pausanias didn't get over it. Philip enters the theatre. The crowd roars. He's smiling, waving. Pausanias moves closer. He's planned this for months. Got horses waiting outside. Pausanias strikes. A dagger flashes. The blade goes into Philip's chest, once, twice. The king drops. White robe turns red. Pausanias sprints for the exit, but he trips. The bodyguards are on him in seconds. Spears punch through his body. He dies before anyone can ask questions. Philip bleeds out in the theatre, dead at his daughter's wedding, and Alexander, 20-year-old Alexander, suddenly becomes king. Here's where it gets brutal. Within hours, Alexander moves, not with grief, with cold calculation. He knows exactly what happens to new kings who show weakness. They get replaced. Fast. First target, Attalus, the uncle who insulted Alexander, the man who violated Pausanias and set this whole thing in motion. Alexander sends men to the army camp where Attalus commands troops. They don't arrest him. They kill him. Quick. Clean. Message sent. Next, Cleopatra Eurydice and her infant daughter, Philip's new wife and baby, the legitimate heirs everyone whispered about. Some sources say Alexander's mother Olympias handles this personally. She forces Cleopatra to watch her baby daughter roasted alive, then makes Cleopatra hang herself. Maybe Alexander ordered it. Maybe he just didn't stop it. Either way, the rivals are dead. Then Alexander goes after anyone else with a claim to the throne. Cousins, half-brothers, anyone with royal blood who might challenge him. He doesn't waste time with trials, just executions, one after another. The streets of Macedon run with the blood of his own family. Think about this. You're 20 years old, your father just got murdered at a family event. Normal people would be traumatized, grieving, lost. Alexander spends maybe a day securing the throne, then starts killing everyone who might threaten it. That's not grief. That's survival instinct cranked to 11. The Macedonian nobles watch this young king eliminate threats with surgical precision. Some of them probably helped kill Philip. Now they're wondering if they're next. Alexander doesn't care what they think. He cares about one thing. Nobody questions his right to rule. Within weeks the purge is done, the throne is secure. The army swears loyalty, the nobles fall in line. Alexander didn't just become king, he became the only possible king. But here's what's interesting. After all that killing, after all that blood, Alexander doesn't celebrate. He doesn't throw parties or give speeches about his new power. He does something strange. He pulls out a book, an old worn copy of Homer's Iliad, the story of Achilles at Troy, the tale of a warrior who chose glory over a long life. Alexander has carried this book since he was a boy. His teacher Aristotle gave it to him, made annotations in the margins. Now, with his father's blood barely dry and his rivals freshly dead, Alexander sits down and reads about heroes, about destiny, about men who became legends. Because Alexander doesn't just want to be king, he wants to be Achilles. He wants to be immortal, not the living forever kind, the remembered forever kind. And that book, that story is going to be his guide to making it happen. What does it mean when a young king, fresh from murdering his way to power, models himself on a mythical warrior? What happens when someone who believes he's half god starts treating an epic poem as a tactical manual? We're talking 335 BCE now. Alexander is 21. He's secured the throne through blood and terror. The the Greek city-states are getting restless, thinking maybe this young king isn't as tough as his father. The city of Thebes rebels. Alexander marches south and burns the entire city to the ground, kills 6,000 people, sells 30,000 into slavery. The message is clear: don't test me. But here's the weird part. After destroying a city, after proving he's just as brutal as any conqueror, Alexander sits in his tent with a book. The same book he's carried since childhood. Homer's Iliad, his personal copy annotated by Aristotle himself. This isn't just reading, this is obsession. Alexander sleeps with the Iliad under his pillow. Every night, he's treating a 500-year-old poem like it's an instruction manual for his life. Why this book? Because it's about Achilles, the greatest warrior who ever lived, the hero who knew he'd die young but chose glory anyway. Achilles got to pick, long boring life or short legendary one. He picked legend. And Alexander is convinced that's his choice too. Picture this. You're a king with unlimited power. You could do anything, build palaces, throw parties, live comfortable. Alexander reads about a guy who dragged a corpse around city walls and thinks, that's goals. The Iliad shapes everything Alexander does. Achilles had a best friend named Patroclus. Alexander makes Hephaestion his closest companion. Achilles fought at Troy. Alexander plans to visit Troy on his way to conquer Persia. Achilles was the son of a goddess. Alexander doubles down on being Zeus's son. It's like someone today modelling their entire business strategy on a superhero movie. Except Alexander has an actual army and actual enemies to practice on. His generals notice. This kid king doesn't just read the stories. He performs them. When he finally gets to Troy in 334 BCE, he doesn't just visit. He runs naked around Achilles' tomb. Naked! A king! Running around a grave like it's a victory lap. Then he takes what he claims is Achilles' armour from the temple and carries it into battle. Think about what's happening in Alexander's head. He's not just inspired by Achilles, he thinks he's Achilles, or the next version, the upgrade. Achilles conquered one city. Alexander is going to conquer the world. Before every major battle, he sacrifices to the heroes of Troy. He pours wine for Achilles. He prays to dead warriors from a poem. And here's the thing that makes it scary. It works. He wins again and again. So in his mind, the epic isn't just a story. It's a prophecy, a blueprint. His men start to wonder if he's reading the Iliad or living it. When they set up camp, Alexander's tent has two things: maps of the territory ahead and his copy of Homer, strategy and scripture. Because for Alexander, they're the same thing. The modern equivalent? Imagine a CEO who bases every business decision on a novel, who quotes fiction in board meetings, who genuinely believes a story written centuries ago is personally speaking to them. You'd think they were delusional. But if their company kept winning, kept growing, kept crushing competition, you'd start to wonder if maybe they knew something you didn't. That's Alexander with the Iliad. His officers think it's weird, but they can't argue with the results. The book says heroes take risks. Alexander charges into battles he shouldn't survive. The book says glory matters more than safety. Alexander leads from the front where kings aren't supposed to be. Here's where it gets dangerous. Achilles died young. Alexander knows this. Everyone knows this. The whole point of Achilles' story is that he chose fame over years. And Alexander has decided that's not a warning. It's a goal. When you believe an epic poem is your destiny, you don't plan for old age. You don't build for the future. You chase glory like it's going to disappear. And for Alexander, that means bigger risks, crazier plans, more impossible victories. The Iliad teaches that heroes face overwhelming odds. So Alexander keeps finding overwhelming odds to face. The book says real warriors don't retreat. So Alexander never retreats, even when he should. It's like he's trying to write himself into the poem, trying to make future generations tell his story the way he tells Achilles's. But there's a problem with modelling your life on a tragedy. Tragedies don't end well. Achilles gets killed by an arrow to the heel, dies before he can go home, wins everything and loses everything, and Alexander is sprinting towards that same ending, convinced it's the only ending worth having. What happens when your role model is someone who died young and angry? What happens when you're so focused on being legendary that you forget to be human? And what happens when the book that's supposed to guide you starts feeling less like inspiration and more like a script you can't escape? It's 333 BCE. Alexander is marching through Asia Minor, modern-day Turkey. He's already won his first major battle against the Persians at the Granicus River. But now he makes a detour. He's heading to a city called Gordium. Not for strategic reasons, for a legend. There's a knot in Gordium, not just any knot, the Gordian knot. It's been sitting in a temple for centuries. Massive, complex, made from cornel bark, tied so tight and intricate that nobody can see where it begins or ends. And there's a prophecy attached. Whoever unties this knot will rule all of Asia, rule all of Asia. That's what Alexander wants. That's what he's been dreaming about since he was a kid reading about Achilles. So he's got to see this knot, got to try. His army thinks this is a waste of time. They're in enemy territory. The Persian Empire is ahead of them. They should be planning battles, not chasing old stories. But Alexander doesn't care, because he's not just a general. He's a character in an epic. And epic heroes don't ignore prophecies. They arrive at Gordium. The whole city comes out to watch, local priests, soldiers, citizens. Everyone wants to see if this young Macedonian king can do what nobody else has done for hundreds of years. The temple doors open. There it is, the knot. It's tied to an ancient ox cart that supposedly belonged to King Midas. Yeah, the Midas. The one from the Golden Touch story. The knot holds the cart's yoke to the pole. Generations of people have tried to untie it. Kings, priests, the smartest people in Asia, all failed. Alexander walks up to it, studies it. This thing is gnarly. You can't find the ends, can't see where to start. It's less a knot and more a solid mass of rope that used to be a knot. Time and pressure have turned it into basically wood. Think about the pressure on Alexander right now. Everyone's watching, his own men, the locals. If he fails, he looks like a fool who believes in fairy tales. If he doesn't try, he looks weak. And the prophecy says whoever unties it rules Asia. Not might rule, not could rule, will rule. His generals are probably sweating. This is bad tactics. You don't stake your reputation on a magic trick. You don't tie your destiny to a rope puzzle. But Alexander has staked everything on being special, on being chosen. This is his moment to prove it. He tries to untie it, gets his fingers in there, pulls, nothing. The knot doesn't budge. He tries a different angle, still nothing. Minutes pass, the crowd shifts, whispers start. This isn't going well. Then Alexander does something nobody expects. He steps back, looks at the knot, looks at the crowd, and says something like, "What difference does it make how I loose it?" He draws his sword. One swing. The blade cuts through the knot. The rope falls apart. The prophecy doesn't say untie, it says loose, release, free, and Alexander just freed the hell out of that knot. The crowd loses it. Some people are shocked, some are angry. The priests look like they can't decide if this counts. But Alexander doesn't care what they think. He cares what his men think, and his men are cheering. because their king just turned an impossible puzzle into a solved problem with one sword strike. That night, thunder rolls across the sky, lightning, a huge storm. The priests say it's a sign from Zeus. The gods approve. They're confirming Alexander did the right thing. Maybe it's just weather. Maybe it's coincidence. But Alexander takes it as proof, divine approval, his father Zeus saying, "Well done, son." This moment is pure Alexander. Faced with an ancient test, he doesn't play by the rules. He makes his own rules. Can't untie it? Cut it. Can't solve it the traditional way? Solve it your way. And then claim the gods backed you up. It's brilliant, it's arrogant, it's completely insane, and it works. From that moment, Alexander believes even harder that he's destined to rule Asia. Not because he untied a knot, because he refused to let a knot stop him. The prophecy didn't care about method, just result. And Alexander delivered the result. His men see this and start to believe too. Maybe their king really is different. Maybe he really does have divine backing. Because normal people would have struggled with that knot and failed. Alexander just cut through the problem, literally. But here's the thing about shortcuts. They work great until they don't. Cutting the knot made Alexander famous. It added to his legend. But it also taught him a dangerous lesson. When faced with something impossible, don't solve it. Destroy it. Don't work with the problem. Eliminate the problem. That works for knots, for symbolic challenges, for prophecies. But what about when the stakes are real? When it's not rope but steel? Not a temple but a battlefield? Alexander already learned that lesson the hard way. Just a year earlier, in his very first battle against the Persians, he nearly didn't live long enough to see this knot. At the Granicus River, he charged in with that same cut-through-everything attitude, and it almost got him killed on day one. It's 334 BCE, 1 year before the knot. Alexander has just crossed into Asia with his army. This is it. The moment he's been waiting for his whole life. He's invading the Persian Empire, following Achilles' footsteps, proving he's destined for glory. The Persians are waiting at the Granicus River. Maybe 20,000 men. They've chosen their ground perfectly. The river is deep, fast current, steep muddy banks on the far side, and Persian cavalry is lined up right at the top of those banks, ready to slaughter anyone who tries to climb up. Alexander's generals take one look and say no. Parmenion, the old veteran who served Philip, begs Alexander to wait. Camp for the night. Cross in the morning when they can scout better positions. This is a trap. A killing ground. Alexander says they're crossing now, right now, in the afternoon, in full view of the enemy, because waiting is what cautious kings do. And Alexander isn't cautious. He's Achilles, and Achilles doesn't wait. His experienced generals are telling him this is suicide. The Persians have every advantage. High ground, better position. They can rain death down on you while you're stuck in the water. And Alexander says we're going in anyway. Why? Because in the Iliad, Achilles doesn't calculate odds. He charges in and trusts the gods. So that's what Alexander does. He orders the companion cavalry forward. He's leading them personally. Of course he is. They plunge into the river. Horses struggle against the current. Water up to the riders' chests. Arrows start falling. Men go down. They hit the far bank. Steep, muddy, slippery. Horses lose their footing. Riders slide back into the water. At the top, Persian cavalry waits with spears and swords. Everything the generals warned about is happening. Alexander is right in the middle of it. Bucephalus is climbing, slipping, climbing again. Alexander's swinging his sword, trying to keep Persian spears away. Around him, his men are dying, drowning, getting speared. This glorious charge is turning into a massacre. Then it gets worse. A Persian commander named Spithridates sees Alexander, recognizes him, maybe from the fancy armour, maybe from how he fights. Spithridates decides to end this invasion right here. He rides straight at Alexander with his sword raised. They clash, swords ring, Alexander strikes first. His sword hits Spithridates' face, cuts through, but the blade breaks. Alexander's sword just snapped. He's in the middle of a river battle with a broken weapon. Spithridates isn't done. He raises his sword for a killing blow, a massive overhead strike aimed right at Alexander's head. This is it. The invasion of Persia is about to end because a 22-year-old king thought he was immortal. The sword comes down. Alexander can't block it, can't dodge. The blade hits his helmet, cuts through the metal, slices into his scalp. Blood pours down his face. He's wounded, dazed, about to take a second hit that will finish him. Then another Persian noble, Rosaces, brother of Spithridates, comes from behind. He raises his sword. 2 Persians, 1 wounded king with a broken blade. This is how Alexander the Great dies. In his first real fight against Persia, cut down in a river because he was too arrogant to wait. The sword swings down at Alexander's back. He doesn't even see it coming. And then Clytus saves his life. Black Clytus, one of Alexander's cavalry, sees what's happening, spurs his horse forward. His spear catches Rosaces in the back, punches through. Rosaces falls dead. Spithridates turns confused. Clytus is already on him, sword through the chest. Spithridates drops. Alexander is alive, bleeding, helmet destroyed, sword broken, but alive, because one of his men was close enough and fast enough to stop 2 killing blows, not because of destiny, not because Zeus protected him, because Clytus was there. The battle turns after that. More Macedonians make it up the bank. The Persian line breaks. They retreat. Alexander wins. His first battle in Asia is a victory, but it was a victory by inches. By one man being in the right place at the right second. Alexander probably doesn't see it that way. He probably thinks the gods intervened, that Zeus sent Clytus to save him, that this proves he's destined, protected, special. But Clytus knows the truth. Clytus saw how close Alexander came to dying, saw the broken sword, saw the blade hit his helmet. Clytus saved Alexander's life with his own hands, and he'll remember that. Remember that the god king needed a human to keep him alive. This moment should have taught Alexander to be careful, to listen to his generals, to recognize that courage without strategy is just stupidity. But it doesn't, because he survived, and in his mind survival means he was right. The charge worked. The gods protected him. Do it again. So that's what he does, again and again, charges into impossible situations, takes insane risks, and somehow, impossibly, he never loses a single battle, not one. He'll cross the Hindu Kush mountains, the impassable range, to outflank enemies. He'll face war elephants, lead cavalry charges that should end in disaster. Through all his campaigns, every fight he wins, even when he shouldn't. Is that divine protection, or is it just luck that hasn't run out yet? That question gets answered at Gaugamela. Remember that suicidal charge we started with? The one where Alexander faced Darius and 5-1 odds? The charge that should have ended everything? Well, Granicus taught Alexander that impossible charges can work, that divine favour covers reckless courage, that the gods won't let him die. So when he faces Darius again at Issus and then at Gaugamela, he doesn't hesitate. He does exactly what worked before. He charges straight into the impossible. And this time the stakes aren't just a battle, they're an empire. We're back at Gaugamela now, 331 BCE. That charge Alexander launched at the start of our story. The insane 5-1 odds straight into the Persian centre moment. Let's finish it. Alexander and his companion cavalry are thundering toward Darius. The gap in the Persian line is opening, but it's not a clean path. It's chaos. Persian cavalry trying to close the gap, scythed chariots spinning blades, infantry rushing to protect their king, and Alexander is heading straight into all of it. Bucephalus is old now, 20 years old, but the horse is running like he's young again. Alexander's spear is levelled. His men are right behind him. They're not thinking about odds anymore. They're committed, all in. The Persians see them coming. Officers are screaming orders, trying to reorganize, trying to stop this wedge of Macedonian cavalry from reaching Darius. Because if Alexander gets to Darius, if the kings meet face to face, everything changes. Alexander breaks through the first line. His spear goes through a Persian officer. He drops the spear, draws his sword. They're cutting deeper, closer to the royal chariot. Darius can see them now, can see Alexander coming for him personally. And Darius does what he did twice before. He runs. The Emperor of Persia, ruler of the largest empire on earth, turns his chariot and flees, just like he did at Issus 2 years ago, just like he did at Gaugamella's start when Alexander first charged. 3 times Alexander has faced Darius. 3 times Darius has run away. The Persian center collapses. When your king runs, your army follows. Soldiers who were fighting now turn and flee. The whole massive force starts breaking apart. Alexander's gamble worked. The suicidal charge succeeded. Again. But here's what's wild. This is the 3rd time. At Issus, in 333 BCE, Darius brought his whole family to watch him destroy Alexander. His mother, his wife, his daughters. He was that confident. Then Alexander outmaneuvered him in a narrow pass, and Darius fled so fast he left his family behind. Alexander captured them, treated them well like royalty. But still, Darius abandoned his own mother to save himself. After Issus, Darius sent letters, offered Alexander half his empire, massive amounts of gold, his daughter's hand in marriage. Just stop the invasion. Parmenion, the old general, said, "I would accept if I were Alexander." Alexander replied, "I would too, if I were Parmenion." Then he kept marching. Now at Gaugamela, Darius assembled the biggest army possible, called in troops from every corner of his empire, picked the perfect battlefield, had every advantage, and when Alexander charged, Darius ran again. Think about what this does to Alexander's belief system. He's now beaten the Persian emperor 3 times, each time with worse odds, each time by doing exactly what his general said not to do, each time by charging straight at the enemy like Achilles would. And it keeps working. How do you not believe you're divinely protected after that? How do you not think the gods are real and they're on your side? Normal kings don't win like this. Normal kings don't face 5-to-1 odds and come out victorious. Normal kings listen to advice and play it safe. Alexander isn't normal, and Gaugamela just proved it to everyone, to his army, to the Persians, to himself. The battle becomes a rout. The Macedonians chase the fleeing Persians for miles. Darius escapes, but his empire is done. The heartland of Persia lies open. Babylon surrenders without a fight. Susa opens its gates. The treasuries of the richest empire on earth belong to Alexander. He's 25 years old. He's conquered the known world's superpower. He's done what his father dreamed of but never accomplished. He's surpassed every Greek hero except maybe Achilles, and he's just getting started. Because here's the thing about achieving your impossible dream before you're 30. What do you do next? Alexander wanted to conquer Persia. Done. He wanted to prove he was special, chosen, divine. Done. He wanted glory that would last forever. Done. So what happens when you run out of goals but you're too young to stop? When you've proven everything you needed to prove but the only life you know is conquest? When you've beaten the unbeatable but there's still more map to cover? Alexander looks east, beyond Persia, toward India, toward lands even the Persians didn't fully control, and he thinks, why stop now? The gods have protected him this far, they'll keep protecting him, right? Darius keeps running, Alexander keeps chasing. But this chase is about to teach Alexander a hard lesson. You can beat an empire, you can win impossible battles, you can charge into certain death and survive, but you can't control everything. You can't conquer geography, and you can't force men to follow you past the edge of their world. The victories are about to get harder, the costs higher, the empire bigger but more fragile, and that belief in divine protection, that's about to get tested in ways that swords and spears can't touch. But right now, standing on the battlefield at Gaugamela with the Persian Empire broken at his feet, Alexander is unstoppable, undefeated, and absolutely convinced that he's meant for something even greater than this. It's 332 BCE. Alexander is marching down the coast of what's now Lebanon. He's got Persia on the run. Cities are surrendering left and right. This should be easy. Then he gets to Tyre. Tyre is different. It's not on the mainland. It's an island city half a mile offshore. Massive walls rising straight out of the sea. The Tyrians have the best navy in the Mediterranean. They've got supplies, fresh water from springs on the island, and they've never been conquered, not once in their entire history. The Tyrian leaders send a message to Alexander. You can worship at our temple on the mainland, but you're not coming to our island. We're staying neutral. Thanks but no thanks. Alexander doesn't do neutral. You're with him or against him. And telling him he can't enter your city? That's against him. He demands entry, they refuse. So Alexander decides to do something completely insane. He's going to build a bridge, a causeway, from the mainland to the island, half a mile of it, across open water, in range of Tyre's navy and archers. His engineers think he's lost his mind. But Alexander has momentum. He's beaten Darius twice, cut the Gordian knot, won every battle. In his head, physics and logic are just obstacles for normal people. He's the son of Zeus. He'll build a bridge to an island if he wants to. So they start building. They demolish old Tyre on the mainland for materials. Timber, stones, anything they can use. They drive pylons into the seabed, start piling up rock and wood and dirt, creating a walkway across the sea. The Tyrians watch from their walls. At first they laugh. This is impossible. The water is too deep, the current's too strong, the causeway will never reach them, and even if it does, they'll just destroy it. But Alexander keeps building, day after day, week after week. The causeway grows. The Tyrians stop laughing, they start attacking. Ships sail out and fire arrows at the workers, rain down rocks, kill dozens of men. Alexander builds protective screens, keeps going. The Tyrians get creative. They fill a ship with kindling, sail it to the causeway and set it on fire. The whole thing rams into Alexander's siege towers, burns them to ash, destroys weeks of work in hours. Alexander doesn't quit. He builds new towers, taller ones, stronger ones. He also does something clever. He gathers ships from other cities he's conquered, builds his own navy. Now he can protect the causeway from sea attacks. Months pass. The causeway reaches closer. The Tyrians can't believe it. This lunatic Greek actually built a bridge across the sea. What should be impossible is happening right in front of them. Alexander's siege towers finally reach the walls. He's got battering rams, catapults. His men are fighting on the walls now. The Tyrians fight back hard. They pour hot sand down on the attackers. It gets inside armour and burns skin. They drop boulders, fight hand to hand. This is brutal. Alexander's navy breaks through the harbours, blocks them. Now Tyre can't get supplies or escape. They're trapped. The siege towers finally breach the walls. Macedonian soldiers pour into the city. What happens next is not pretty. Alexander is furious. This siege took 7 months. 7 months for one city. Thousands of his men died. So he makes an example. He orders 2,000 Tyrian men crucified along the beach. Crucified. That's not just execution, that's torture. That's a message. 30,000 survivors get sold into slavery. An entire population erased. The great city of Tyre, unconquered for centuries, is destroyed because they told Alexander no. The causeway still exists today, by the way. It filled in with sand over centuries. Tyre isn't an island anymore. It's a peninsula. Because Alexander literally changed the geography to prove a point. But here's the thing about Alexander. He's not simple, not predictable. You can't look at Tyre and think you understand him. Because the same man who crucifies 2,000 people for defying him can turn around and show mercy that seems to come from a completely different person. It's not random. It's calculated, strategic. Alexander's cruelty and Alexander's kindness both serve the same goal. Building a legend, creating an image, making people wonder which version they'll get. Resist him, you might end up like Tyre. But submit, you might be shocked by what happens instead. The question isn't whether Alexander is cruel or merciful. The question is, what does he need you to see? And if you're standing in front of him, waiting to find out, which Alexander will you meet? Remember that battle at Issus in 333 BCE? When Darius brought his whole family to watch him crush Alexander, his mother Sisygambis, his wife Statera, his daughters. They were there to witness Persian glory, and instead they witnessed Darius flee. And when Alexander's army overran the Persian camp, they became prisoners. Royal prisoners, the most valuable hostages in the world. Think about what Alexander could do with them. Parade them in chains through Greek cities, use them as bargaining chips, threaten them to make Darius surrender. Sell them into slavery like he did to the Tyrians. Any other conqueror would squeeze every drop of advantage from capturing the Persian emperor's family. Alexander does none of that. He treats them like royalty, gives them their own pavilion, assigns servants, makes sure they have everything they need. When his generals tell him the women are captured, he doesn't even go to gloat. He sends a message. Your husband and father is alive. You're safe. No one will harm you. Sisygambis, Darius's mother, is terrified. She's heard stories about what conquerors do to royal women. She's expecting the worst. When Alexander finally visits, she doesn't know which young man is the king. She bows to Hephaestion, Alexander's best friend, because he's taller and looks more royal. Someone corrects her. She's horrified. She just insulted the conqueror of Persia by bowing to the wrong man. Alexander could use this as an excuse for anything. Instead, he smiles. Don't worry. He's Alexander too. That's it. No punishment, no humiliation, just a joke to put an old woman at ease. From that moment, Sisygambis becomes more loyal to Alexander than to her own son. When messengers bring news from Darius, she barely reacts. When Alexander visits, she lights up. This Greek conqueror, this foreign invader, treats her better than her own son who abandoned her on a battlefield. It's brilliant psychology. Alexander isn't just conquering land, he's conquering hearts and minds. By honouring Darius's family, he makes Darius look weak. The Persian emperor who ran away and left his mother, versus the Greek king who protects her. Who looks more worthy of an empire? But here's what makes it genuine, or at least partly genuine. Alexander isn't just playing a game. He believes in the code of heroes. Achilles had honour. Epic warriors respected worthy opponents. And in Alexander's mind, Persian royalty deserves respect because Persia is a worthy empire. Compare this to Tyre. The Tyrians resisted. They defied him, so he destroyed them without mercy. But Darius's family didn't resist. They were captured, helpless royal, and helpless royalty fits into Alexander's heroic worldview. You don't harm them. You protect them. You prove you're better than your enemy by being more honourable. This pattern plays out everywhere. Cities that surrender, he's often generous, gives them autonomy, respects their customs. Cities that resist, they get examples made of them. It's not inconsistent. It's a system. Submit and you might thrive. Resist and you'll be erased. While he's showing mercy to Persian royals, Alexander is also doing something else. He's founding cities. Lots of them. More than 20 cities called Alexandria. Alexandria in Egypt. Alexandria in what's now Afghanistan. Alexandria in India. Everywhere he goes, he plants a city with his name. These aren't just vanity projects. They are strategic. Greek settlers, Macedonian veterans, Persian locals all mixed together. Greek culture spreading across Asia. His empire isn't just conquered territory, it's being transformed, Hellenized, made Greek. Each Alexandria is a stamp, a permanent mark. Alexander was here. Alexander changed this place forever. Even if his empire falls apart after he dies, even if everything else crumbles, those cities will remain, his name will remain. Think about the ego required for that. 20 cities, all named after yourself, is not enough to conquer. You have to make sure everyone for the next 1,000 years knows who did it. You have to literally put your name on the map. But it works. 2,000 years later, we still know those cities. Alexandria in Egypt became one of the greatest cities in the ancient world. The library, the lighthouse, all because Alexander decided, I'm putting a city here and naming it after me. So you've got two Alexanders operating at the same time, the one who honours Darius's family and earns genuine love from a Persian queen mother, and the one who plasters his name across the world because his ego won't accept being forgotten. Merciful and megalomaniacal. Honourable and hungry for glory, protective and possessive. He's all of it, and that complexity is part of what makes him unstoppable. You can't predict him, you can't prepare for him, because he might spare you or destroy you, and the only way to know is to see which version of Alexander you get. But this careful balance, this mix of mercy and ambition, is about to crack. Because Alexander's next move isn't about honour or strategy, it's about rage. Pure, drunken, destructive rage. It's 330 BCE. Alexander has just captured Persepolis, the ceremonial capital of Persia, the city where Persian emperors were crowned for 200 years, the richest city in the world. His army has already looted it. The treasury alone has 120,000 talents of gold and silver. That's enough wealth to fund his entire army for decades. His men are swimming in riches, Persian jewellery, silk, art. They're carrying so much loot they can barely march. But the city itself still stands, these massive palaces, the throne room of Darius, the audience hall where Persian kings receive tribute from the entire known world, buildings that represent Persian power, Persian glory, the heart of the empire that Alexander just destroyed. Alexander throws a party, a victory celebration. Wine flows freely. His officers are there. His companion cavalry, Greek allies, everyone who helped him conquer Persia. They're drinking, celebrating, getting absolutely drunk. Among the guests is a woman named Thais. She's Athenian. Some sources say she's a courtesan, basically a high-class entertainer. She's clever, bold, and she's been drinking too. Thais stands up. The room goes quiet. She starts talking about Persia, about what the Persians did to Athens 150 years ago. When Xerxes invaded Greece, he burned Athens, destroyed the temples, the Acropolis, everything sacred to the Greeks. Her voice gets louder, more passionate. She's working the room. These Macedonians and Greeks have just conquered the people who once humiliated Greece. And now they're sitting in the Persian capital, drunk, victorious. Why should this city stand when Athens burned? Let's burn it, she says. Let's make Persepolis pay for what Xerxes did to Greece. The room erupts, drunken cheers. The wine has everyone feeling invincible, feeling righteous. This isn't just conquest anymore. This is revenge, justice, payback for something that happened before most of them were born. Alexander is drunk too, really drunk. And in this moment, with his army cheering and this woman calling for vengeance, he makes a decision. He grabs a torch. Think about this. Alexander has spent years trying to present himself as the legitimate ruler of Persia, not a destroyer, not a conqueror who erases. He honoured Darius's family. He's been wearing Persian clothes, adopting Persian customs, trying to show he's not here to eliminate Persian culture. He's here to rule it. All of that careful image building is about to go up in flames, literally. Alexander walks out of the banquet hall with his torch. His officers follow. Thais follows. They're all carrying torches now, drunk, laughing, singing. They walk to the great palace, the heart of Persepolis. Alexander throws his torch. It lands on wooden beams. The fire catches. His officers throw their torches. Thais throws hers. Within minutes, the palace is burning. The flames spread from palace to palace. The throne room, the treasury buildings, the audience halls where Persian kings sat in glory, all of it burning. The fire is so massive it lights up the night sky. People can see it from miles away. His men watch. Some are cheering, some are silent, some are probably thinking, what are we doing? Because this isn't strategic. This isn't about winning. The war is already won. Darius is on the run. Persia is defeated. Burning Persepolis doesn't accomplish anything militarily. This is pure emotion. Rage. Revenge for something that happened 150 years ago to a different generation. It's also something darker. It's Alexander showing that he can destroy anything, even the most beautiful city in the world, even the symbol of an entire civilization. The fire burns all night. By morning, Persepolis is ruins. Blackened stone, collapsed roofs, the glory of Persia reduced to ash and rubble. Centuries of art, history, culture, gone in one drunken night. When Alexander sobers up, does he regret it? Some sources say yes. Some say he immediately felt ashamed. Others say he tried to justify it as revenge for Athens. But the damage is done. You can't unburn a city. Here's what's interesting. Alexander can't decide what he wants to be. Does he want to be a Persian king who rules with Persian traditions? Then why burn their holiest city? Does he want to be a Greek avenger? Then why did he spend years honouring Persian customs? The truth is, he wants both. He wants to be everything. Greek hero, Persian emperor, son of Zeus, legitimate ruler, destroyer of enemies. And those identities are starting to clash. Burning Persepolis shows something crucial about Alexander. When he's drunk, when his emotions take over, when someone appeals to his sense of revenge or glory, he'll do things that contradict everything he's been working toward. His self-control is breaking down, and alcohol is becoming a problem. Alexander drinks heavily. His father Philip drank heavily. It runs in the family. But Alexander is starting to drink more, and when he drinks, bad things happen. Persepolis burned because of wine. What else will burn? Who else will suffer when Alexander can't control his impulses? His men notice. They're starting to see cracks in the God King, starting to realize that divine favor doesn't protect you from your own worst decisions, starting to wonder if following Alexander to the edge of the world is going to end well. But they can't stop now. They're too deep, too far from home, and Alexander isn't done. He's barely started, because ahead lies Egypt, where he'll stop trying to be a Greek king and start claiming to be an actual god. It's 332 BCE, just before the Persepolis disaster. Alexander marches into Egypt. The Persians have been ruling Egypt for 200 years and the Egyptians hate them. So when Alexander shows up, they welcome him like a liberator. No battle, no siege. The Persian governor hands over the keys and leaves. Egypt is Alexander's without a fight. But Alexander doesn't just want to rule Egypt. He wants to become Egypt. The Egyptian priests have a system. Whoever rules Egypt isn't just a king, they're Pharaoh, and Pharaoh isn't human. Pharaoh is the son of the sun god Ra, a living god walking among mortals. It's been this way for 3,000 years. Alexander hears this and thinks, perfect, I'm already supposedly the son of Zeus. Why not add Egyptian god to the resume? So the priests crown him Pharaoh. Full ceremony, full ritual. They dress him in Egyptian royal clothes, give him the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt, declare him son of Ra. And Alexander accepts it all. Not as a political move, he actually believes it, but that's not enough. Alexander decides to visit the Oracle of Siwa. This is an oasis temple in the middle of the Libyan desert. Days of travel through brutal heat and sand. The oracle there is famous. It's supposedly where you can ask the god Ammon, the Egyptian version of Zeus, direct questions, and the god answers. His generals think this is crazy. They just got Egypt without fighting. Darius is still out there regrouping. They should be planning the next campaign. But Alexander needs to go to this temple, needs to hear from a god that he's special. They trek across the desert, almost die from lack of water, get lost. Legend says crows guide them to the oasis. Maybe they did. Maybe it's just a story Alexander tells later to make it sound more divine. They reach Siwa. The temple sits in the middle of this lush oasis, surrounded by nothing but sand. The priests are expecting him. They've heard the pharaoh is coming. Alexander goes into the inner sanctum alone. Nobody knows exactly what happens in there, what questions he asks, what answers he gets. When Alexander comes out, he's different, quieter, more certain. Someone asks what the oracle said. Alexander says, "I heard what my heart desired." That's it. That's all he says. But from that moment on, Alexander believes completely that he's the son of a god. Not metaphorically, not symbolically. Actually, literally. Divine blood in his veins. His Macedonian officers are uncomfortable. This pharaoh stuff is one thing. That's just Egyptian politics. But Alexander seems to actually believe it now. He starts demanding people treat him with divine honors. Wants them to bow like they would to a god. Greeks don't bow to anyone. That's a Persian thing, a barbarian thing. Greeks stand as equals before their leaders, but Alexander wants prostration, wants people flat on the ground before him, because that's how you approach a god. Some of his men start to worry. The kid who tamed Bucephalus, who charged at Granicus, who cut the Gordian knot, is turning into something else, something that thinks it's above human limitations, above human advice, above reality. But here's the scary part. Maybe he's right to believe it. Look at his track record. He survived Granicus when he should have died, won at Gaugamela when he was outnumbered 5-1, built a causeway across the sea, conquered the Persian Empire before age 26, Normal humans don't do this. So when Alexander says he's the son of Zeus, his men can't completely dismiss it. Because what if he is? What if the gods really are protecting him? What if denying his divinity brings down godly wrath? This belief changes everything. A king who thinks he's human might listen to advice, might accept limits, might know when to stop. But a god? Gods don't stop. Gods don't compromise. Gods don't accept that something is impossible. While in Egypt, Alexander also founds his most famous city, Alexandria, right on the Mediterranean coast. He personally marks out where the walls should go, where the main streets should run. He designs a city meant to outlast empires, and it does. Alexandria becomes one of the greatest cities of the ancient world, the library, the lighthouse, the centre of learning and culture for centuries. All because Alexander pointed at some sand and said, "Build my city here." That's the Alexander paradox. He's delusional enough to think he's a god, but that delusion pushes him to achieve things that seem divine. He builds cities that last millennia, wins battles that should be impossible, and changes the world in ways that still echo today. Alexander leaves Egypt believing he's divine. But believing you're a god doesn't mean you stop being human. It doesn't erase human desires, human attractions, the need for connection that even gods in myths couldn't escape. And in the mountains of Bactria, Alexander is about to discover that being half god doesn't protect you from falling completely, humanly, destructively in love. It's 327 BCE. Alexander is in Bactria, modern-day Afghanistan. He's been campaigning here for 2 years. This isn't like conquering Persia. There's no empire to topple, no king to chase, just endless mountains, tribal warlords, and guerrilla warfare. His men are exhausted. They've marched from Greece to Egypt to Persia to Central Asia. They're fighting in terrain that makes no sense. Valleys that take days to cross, peaks covered in snow, local fighters who know every cave and pass. Alexander captures a fortress called the Sogdian Rock. It's supposed to be impregnable, perched on a cliff. The local warlord, a man named Oxyatis, thought he was safe there, thought his family was safe. Alexander's men climb the cliff at night, take the fortress. Oxyatis flees, but his family is captured. Among the prisoners is Oxyatis' daughter. Her name is Roxana, and she's beautiful, not just pretty, stunning, the kind of beautiful that makes men stupid. Alexander sees her, and something happens. Maybe it's genuine attraction, maybe it's just been too long since he felt anything human, maybe he's tired of being a god and wants to be a man for a moment. Whatever it is, he's hooked. His officers expect him to take her as a concubine. That's what conquerors do. You win, you take. But Alexander doesn't do that. He proposes marriage, actual marriage, to a Bactrian princess whose father is still fighting against him. His Macedonian companions lose their minds. You don't marry the enemy. You don't elevate a foreign princess to queen. This isn't strategic. This is emotion. And emotion makes you weak. But Alexander sees it differently. He's trying to build an empire that fuses East and West. Greek culture mixing with Persian, Bactrian, Egyptian. If he marries Roxana, if he honours her and her people, maybe they'll stop fighting. Maybe they'll join him instead of resisting. It's brilliant if it works. It's a disaster if it doesn't. The wedding happens, full ceremony. Alexander cuts a loaf of bread with his sword and shares it with Roxana. That's the Macedonian ritual. You share bread, you share life. They're married. She's queen. A Bactrian woman who a month ago was his enemy is now his wife. Oxyatis hears about this. His daughter isn't a prisoner anymore. She's married to the most powerful man in the world. He stops fighting, joins Alexander, brings his forces with him. The marriage actually works as strategy, but it's more than strategy. Alexander seems genuinely into her. He's not just using her for political gain. He spends time with her, listens to her, shows affection. For a man who's spent years seeing everyone as either followers or obstacles, Roxana becomes something else, someone real. His vision expands. If he can marry a Bactrian princess, why stop there? Why not have his officers marry Persian and Bactrian women? Why not create a new kind of army, a new kind of culture? Greeks and Persians and everyone else mixed together, united under his rule, all part of his empire. This is revolutionary. Nobody's tried this before. Conquerors take, they don't blend, they don't unite cultures as equals. But Alexander wants fusion. He starts wearing Persian clothes more often, adopts Persian court ceremonies, tries to show both sides that he's their king, not a foreign invader. The problem, his Macedonians hate it. They didn't march across the world to become Persian. They didn't fight and bleed to watch their king bow to Eastern customs, and they definitely didn't expect their king to marry one of them. Tension grows. Alexander is trying to be everything to everyone. Greek to the Greeks, Persian to the Persians, God to the Egyptians, Macedonian king to his army. But you can't be everything. Eventually something cracks. Roxana becomes a symbol. To Alexander, she represents his vision of a united empire. To his men, she represents him abandoning his roots, choosing foreigners over the people who made him great. She's innocent in all this, just a woman who married a king, but she's caught in the middle of a culture war. Alexander doesn't see the problem, or he sees it and doesn't care. He's convinced his vision is right, that uniting East and West is destiny, that the gods want this, and if his men don't like it, they'll learn, they'll adapt, they have to, because he's Alexander, he's divine, he doesn't fail. But gods can be blind to human limits. Gods don't see when their followers are breaking, when loyalty is turning to resentment, when the army that conquered the world is starting to wonder if their king has lost his mind. And that resentment is building toward an explosion. Because Alexander's next move isn't about cultural unity, it's about absolute control. He's going to demand something from his men that crosses a line, something that turns grumbling into open defiance. It's 324 BCE. Alexander is in Susa, one of the old Persian capitals. The war is mostly over. He's conquered everything from Greece to India. His men are thinking about going home. Finally, after nearly a decade of marching and fighting and bleeding across the known world, Alexander has different plans. He's throwing a wedding. Actually, he's throwing 92 weddings, all at once. And his officers are the grooms whether they like it or not. He's been planning this. Found Persian and Bactrian noblewomen for all his top commanders. Rich families, important bloodlines, the kind of marriages that create political alliances, and he's not asking. He's ordering. You will marry this woman. You will unite Greek and Persian blood. You will create the future. Picture the scene. Susa's Great Hall is decorated for a massive ceremony. 92 couples, Alexander and his closest 91 officers, each matched with a Persian or Bactrian bride. Some of these men have never met their future wives. Some don't even speak the same language. Alexander stands up to explain his vision. This is about unity, about creating one empire, one culture, one people. Greeks and Persians aren't enemies anymore. They're family now, through marriage, through blood, through children who'll be both Greek and Persian. His officers sit there silent. They're supposed to be celebrating. This is an honor, right? Being married in a ceremony alongside their king? But it doesn't feel like an honor. It feels like a command. like Alexander is forcing them to blur their Greek identity, their culture, their choice. Some of these men have families back home, wives and kids they haven't seen in years. Now they're taking Persian wives too. The arrangement doesn't sit right. But you don't say no to Alexander. Not anymore. He's a god king now. He's Pharaoh of Egypt. He's defeated every enemy, so when he says you're getting married, you get married. The ceremony happens. All 92 couples. Alexander marries Statera, Darius's daughter. He's already married to Roxana, but that doesn't matter. Persian kings had multiple wives. Alexander is a Persian king now, at least in his mind. His officers go through the motions, say the vows, accept their brides, smile like they're supposed to, but inside they're seething. This isn't what they signed up for. They joined Alexander to conquer Persia, not become Persian. The resentment doesn't explode immediately. It builds, festers, grows over the months that follow, because the weddings are just the start. Alexander keeps pushing his vision of cultural fusion, keeps adopting to Persian customs, keeps elevating Persian nobles to positions of power. Then comes Opis. Later that same year, Alexander's army is gathered. He announces he's sending the oldest veterans home. Finally, after all these years, but he's not sending everyone, just the ones too old or wounded to fight, and he's replacing them with Persian soldiers, integrating Persians into the Macedonian phalanx, not as support, as equals. The veterans erupt. These men have followed Alexander since his father's time, fought in every major battle, bled for Macedonia, and now they're being dismissed, replaced with Persians. "Go fight with your Persians then," someone shouts. Others join in. It's open mutiny, the kind that gets men killed. Alexander doesn't grab anyone. He doesn't need to. He has the ringleaders arrested, orders them executed. 13 men, veterans who spoke what everyone was thinking, dead because they challenged the God King. The army freezes. This isn't a bluff. Alexander just killed his own men for disagreeing with him. The same Alexander who used to eat with his soldiers, who knew their names, who charged into battle beside them. That Alexander is gone. Alexander retreats to his tent, won't come out for days. It's psychological warfare. Let them stew, let them panic. Wonder if he'll really replace them all with Persians. Wonder if they'll ever see home again. Finally the army breaks. They come to his tent begging forgiveness, crying, promising loyalty. Alexander emerges, accepts their apology, and throws a reconciliation feast. Everyone pretends the mutiny never happened. But something shattered. The bond between Alexander and his men cracked beyond repair. Most of those forced marriages, they don't last. As soon as Alexander dies, most officers divorce their Persian wives, send them back to their families. The whole unity project falls apart because it was never real. It was Alexander's fantasy imposed on people who never wanted it. But one marriage survives, Roxana, because Alexander chose her. That one came from something human, not political, and she's pregnant now, carrying what might be Alexander's heir, a child who really would be half Greek, half Persian, the fusion Alexander dreamed of if he lives long enough to see it. Because Alexander's body is breaking down, years of wounds, heavy drinking, pushing himself past human limits, and the drinking's about to lead him somewhere even darker than mutiny or forced marriages. It's about to make him kill the man who saved his life. It's 328 BCE. Samarkand in what's now Uzbekistan. Alexander is throwing another banquet. Wine flows freely. It always does now. Alexander drinks more these days. Heavier, longer. His father Philip was a drunk. Alexander is becoming one too. Among the guests is Cletus, Black Cletus, the man who saved Alexander's life at Granicus, The man who killed 2 Persians about to cut Alexander down when his sword broke and his helmet split open. That was 6 years ago. Clytus still remembers every detail. Alexander barely remembers at all. The drinking starts early. Someone begins praising Alexander, comparing him to the gods, saying he's greater than Heracles, greater than the heroes of old. This is normal now. Flattery is currency. You don't just compliment Alexander, you worship him. Clytus is drunk, really drunk, and he's had enough. You know what? Philip did great things too. Maybe we shouldn't forget that. Maybe Alexander isn't the only great king Macedonia ever had. The room goes quiet. You don't mention Philip anymore. Not like that. Not as an equal. Philip is the past. Alexander is everything. Someone else jumps in, tries to smooth it over, changes the subject back to Alexander's glory, his divine parentage, his unstoppable victories. Clytus gets angrier. Divine parentage? Clytus laughs. It's bitter. Drunk. I saved his divine life at Granicus. Where were the gods then? I was there. My spear, my arm, not Zeus, me. Alexander's face darkens. This is humiliation, in front of everyone, being reminded that he needed saving, that without Clytus, without a human, he'd be dead. No divine protection, just luck and a friend's quick reaction. Other officers try to calm Clytus down, get him to stop, but drunk men don't stop, especially drunk men with legitimate grievances. We're all becoming Persians now, bowing like slaves, wearing their clothes. You're not even Macedonian anymore. You've forgotten where you came from, forgotten the men who made you king. Every word is true, and every word makes it worse, because Alexander knows it. Knows his Macedonians hate the Persian customs, hate the forced marriages, hate being replaced. And Clytus is saying it out loud. Alexander stands up. He's drunk too, furious, shaking. Get out! Get out now! Clytus doesn't move. Truth hurts, doesn't it? The great Alexander can't handle being told he's wrong. Alexander grabs a spear from a guard. His friends jump up, try to get between them. Someone drags Clytus toward the door. For a moment it looks over. But Clytus breaks free, comes back into the hall. Maybe he's not done talking, maybe he wants the last word. You want to kill me? Go ahead. Kill the man who saved your life. That's what gods do, right? Alexander doesn't think. The spear is in his hand. He throws it. The spear hits Clytus in the chest, punches through. Clytus drops. Blood pools on the floor. The room freezes. Nobody moves. Nobody breathes. Alexander stares at what he's done, at his friend, at the man who saved him at Granicus, dead on the floor because of wine and words and rage. Reality hits. Alexander collapses, starts screaming, crying. He grabs the spear, tries to turn it on himself. His guards wrestle it away. He's hysterical, begging someone to kill him, saying he's a murderer, that he killed his friend. His officers are terrified. Not of punishment. They're terrified their king is having a complete breakdown. The man who's supposed to be half god is sobbing on the floor, covered in his friend's blood. Alexander locks himself in his room, won't come out, won't eat. For 3 days he stays there, grieving, spiraling. His men worry he might actually kill himself. Finally, some priests come, tell him it was divine will, that the gods made this happen, that Clytus was fated to die. It's not Alexander's fault, it's garbage, complete garbage, but Alexander needs to hear it, needs permission to stop blaming himself. So he accepts it, comes out, pretends the priests are right, but everyone knows the truth. Alexander killed Cletus because he couldn't handle criticism, because wine stripped away his control, because being treated like a god made him forget he was human. His men watch him emerge from that room, watch him pretend divine fate murdered Cletus instead of drunken rage, and something shifts in them, something quiet, something dangerous. They followed Alexander across the known world, watched him change, watched him become this, and now they're looking at each other, wondering the same thing. How much further? How much longer? How many more friends have to die before this ends? Alexander doesn't see it. He's too wrapped up in his own grief and his need to keep moving, keep conquering, keep proving he's special. He orders the army to march east, always east, toward India, toward the edge of the world. His men shoulder their packs, pick up their weapons, start marching like they always do, like they've done for 10 years. But this time something's different. This time they're counting steps, counting days, counting how much more they can take. It's 326 BCE. Alexander has reached the Hyphasis River in India, modern-day Bears River in Punjab. He's been marching and fighting for 10 years. His army has crossed deserts, mountains, rivers. They've fought Persians, Scythians, Indians. They've gone further than any Greek or Macedonian has ever gone. And they're done. Alexander stands on the bank looking east. There's more out there, more kingdoms, more land. He's heard stories about the Ganges River, about kingdoms beyond with armies even bigger than Persia's, war elephants by the hundreds, riches beyond imagination. He wants to keep going. Of course he does. Alexander doesn't stop. Stopping means admitting there's a limit. And gods don't have limits. He calls his officers together, lays out the plan, cross the Hyphasis, march to the Ganges, conquer India, then maybe swing south, maybe north. The whole world is there for the taking. His officers stand silent. These are men who've followed him everywhere, fought beside him in every battle, and they were looking at him like he's insane. Finally, Quirinus speaks up, a veteran officer, respected, brave. Alexander, the men are exhausted. They've been marching for a decade. They want to go home. Alexander's face hardens. We're so close, just a little further. Further to what? Quirinus asks. We've conquered Persia. We've beaten every enemy. What's left to prove? Everything, Alexander says. The edge of the world. The ocean that surrounds all the lands. That's what's left. The men don't care about the edge of the world. They care about their families, their homes. Some have children that they've never met, wives they haven't seen in years. They've given you everything. Isn't that enough? Alexander looks around the circle, sees it in their faces. They all agree with Quirinus. Every single one, his most loyal officers, the men who made his empire possible. They want to stop. If you're tired, stay here. I'll go on with whoever will follow. It's a bluff. He's calling their loyalty, expecting them to back down, to say of course they'll follow. Nobody speaks, nobody volunteers. They just stand there, waiting. Alexander dismisses them, retreats to his tent for 3 days, just like after Cletus, sulking, waiting for his army to break, to come begging. The army doesn't break. They wait, patient, determined. Alexander's officers come to him, not to apologize, to negotiate. The men won't march east, they can't, but they'll march south, back toward the coast, build a fleet, sail home. It's a compromise. Alexander realizes he has no choice. He can order them to march, they won't obey. For the first time in his life, Alexander faces something he can't conquer. His own army's exhaustion. He agrees to turn back. But he's furious, humiliated. He sets up 12 massive altars on the riverbank, claims they're markers of how far he got. Really, they're monuments to his failure. The place where Alexander the Unstoppable had to stop. The army celebrates. They're going home, finally, after 10 years. But Alexander isn't celebrating, he's seething. He agreed to turn back. But he's going to make the journey south count. Because if he can't conquer east, he'll prove himself in other ways. They march toward the coast through hostile territory. At one city, the Malians, the siege isn't moving fast enough. Alexander is impatient, angry, so he does something reckless. He grabs a ladder, climbs the wall himself. Only a few men follow because the ladder breaks. Alexander is on top of the wall with 3 soldiers, surrounded by enemies. He jumps down. Inside the city, forces his men to rescue him. They break down the gate, pour in, save their king who deliberately put himself in danger. Then an arrow hits Alexander in the chest, punches through his armor, into his lung. He collapses, blood everywhere. His men think he's dead. They go berserk, kill everyone in the city, massacre out of grief and rage. Alexander survives, barely. They carry him back to camp coughing blood. He's wounded badly, and his men are looking at him wondering what's wrong with him. Why risk his life like that? Why this need to prove something after they've already given him everything? They don't understand. Alexander can't stop, won't stop. Stopping means admitting he's not special, not chosen, not divine. It means accepting he's just a man who got lucky. They continue south. Alexander recovers slowly. Too slowly. The wound isn't healing right. He's weak, feverish, but he keeps planning, keeps talking about what's next. Because even wounded, even turned back from India, Alexander's mind is racing. He's thinking about Arabia, about Carthage, about places he hasn't conquered yet. The Hephaestus stopped him from going east. But there are other directions, other worlds to claim. His officers listen and wonder if he's delirious, if the wound has affected his mind, or if this is just Alexander being Alexander, never satisfied, never done, always reaching for something bigger. What they don't know is whether this drive will kill him before he achieves it, whether the body that has been wounded so many times can keep up with the ambition that never stops, whether Alexander the Great will die conquering or die trying. It's 324 BCE. Alexander is back in Babylon. The wound from India has healed. Mostly. He still coughs sometimes, gets winded easier. But he's alive. His army made it back. They survived the journey south through hostile Indian territory. Then came the nightmare, the Gedrosian Desert. Alexander decided to march his army through it. Part punishment for the mutiny at Hephaestus, part proving he could do what even legends hadn't done. The desert killed thousands. Heat, thirst, sand that swallowed men whole. Horses died. Supply wagons were abandoned. Bodies littered the route. They made it through. Barely. The army that conquered Persia limped into Babylon, broken and furious. But they're home, sort of. Babylon isn't Macedonia, but it's civilization. It's rest. Except Alexander isn't resting. He's planning. His officers gather for what they think is a debriefing. Discussion about going home, about disbanding, about finally ending this decade-long campaign. Instead, Alexander pulls out maps. Arabia, he says, points to the peninsula south of Babylon. Nobody's conquered it. The spice trade, the incense routes. We take Arabia, we control everything. His officers stare. They just survived a desert that killed thousands. And he wants to invade another desert? They don't say it out loud. Not after what happened to Clytus. Not after India. But their faces say it. Alexander keeps going. After Arabia, Carthage, they control the western Mediterranean. Then maybe Sicily. Rome is growing. Someone should deal with them before they become a problem. He's not joking, he's serious. Arabia, Carthage, Rome. The man who got stopped at the Hyphasis is already planning 3 more conquests, like the last 10 years were just warm-up. The oracle at Siwa said I'd rule the world, Alexander continues. I'm not done yet. There are still places that don't bow to me, still people who don't know my name. That changes. One of his generals carefully asks about Macedonia, about Greece, about the empire they've already built. Does it need attention, governance, consolidation? Alexander waves it off. He's got governors for that. Administrators. He's not a bureaucrat, he's a conqueror. And conquerors conquer. They don't sit around managing what they've already won. But here's the thing. Alexander is 32 years old. He's been king for 13 years. Been at war for 11. His body is a collection of scars and wounds. The arrow in India. The head wound at Granicus. Countless smaller injuries. Years of heavy drinking, constant stress. Pushing past human limits. He looks exhausted. Older than 32. His hair is thinning. He's gained weight from the drinking. The God King is starting to look mortal. His men see it. They're worried. Not because they love him anymore. That died with Clytus, with the forced marriages, with the Gedrosian desert. But because if Alexander dies, what happens to them? They are thousands of miles from home, in a conquered empire held together by one man's reputation. Alexander doesn't see their concern, or he ignores it. He's too busy planning. He orders ships built for the Arabian campaign, starts gathering supplies, sends scouts to map the coast. This is happening. But there's something else, something darker. Alexander is having dreams, bad ones. Omens keep appearing, birds fall dead at his feet, sacrifices go wrong, priests mutter about bad signs. His friend Hephaestion gets sick. Alexander ignores it all. Omens are for people who lack divine favour. He's the son of Zeus, the Pharaoh of Egypt, the king of Asia. Bad omens don't apply to him. He throws himself into planning Arabia, into planning Carthage, into sketching out an empire that spans from Greece to India to North Africa to Italy. An empire so vast it would make Persia look small. An empire that would prove once and for all that he's not just human. His officers watch the manic energy and wonder, is this genius? Is this madness? Is there even a difference anymore? They've followed Alexander across the world, watched him achieve impossible things, but they've also watched him burn Persepolis in a drunken rage, murder Clytus, nearly die from a wound he got because he was showing off, march them through a desert that killed thousands for no strategic reason. The pattern is clear. Alexander will keep going until something stops him. An army, geography, his own body, something. But what if nothing stops him? What if he really does conquer Arabia? What if he takes Carthage? What if he marches on Rome? Where does it end? Does it end? Or does Alexander just keep reaching for the next conquest, the next glory, the next proof that he's special, until there's nothing left? Not of the world, of him. He's standing in Babylon, master of the largest empire the world has ever seen, planning to make it bigger. And nobody knows if they're watching genius preparing for his greatest triumph, or a man so broken by his own legend that he can't see he's already won everything worth winning. Let's go back, before Babylon, before the grand plans, to the journey home from India. Because between the Hephaestus River and those maps of Arabia, something happened that broke Alexander's army in ways no battle ever did. It's 325 BCE. Alexander's army is heading west from India. They've built a fleet. Part of the army will sail along the coast with Admiral Nearchus. The rest will march overland, 2 routes, safety in numbers. Alexander decides to take the land route through the Gadrosian Desert, modern-day Maran coast of Pakistan and Iran. His officers tell him it's suicide. No army has ever successfully crossed it. Queen Semiramis tried centuries ago, lost most of her forces. Cyrus the Great tried, lost thousands. Alexander hears this and sees a challenge. Another impossible thing to achieve. If Semiramis and Cyrus failed, succeeding would put him above them. Prove he's better than legendary rulers. The God King can conquer geography itself. Also, he's still angry about Hephaestus, still furious his men made him turn back. This march through the desert? Part strategy, part punishment. You didn't want to conquer India? Fine. Let's see how you like this. They enter the desert. 60,000 people, soldiers, camp followers, families, pack animals carrying supplies. It starts manageable. Hot, but manageable. Then the real desert begins. The sand isn't like beach sand. It's fine powder that gets everywhere. In your eyes, your mouth, your lungs. The sun reflects off it, blinding. The heat is crushing. Men start dropping within days. Water becomes everything. They planned for wells along the route. Most are dry, some are poisoned. The locals know where the water is and aren't sharing. They watch this massive army die from a distance. Alexander pushes forward. There's no turning back now, too far in. They have to reach the other side or die trying. Supply wagons get abandoned, too heavy. Animals die, get butchered for meat. Then that meat spoils in the heat within hours. Men start drinking their own urine, then stop urinating because there's no water left in them. They march at night to escape the sun, but night brings cold that feels like knives after the day's heat. People die from exposure, from exhaustion, from giving up. Flash floods come in a desert. Sudden walls of water rushing down wadis, dry riverbeds, sweeps away camps, drowns soldiers too weak to run. The desert kills with thirst and with water in the same day. Alexander marches at the front sharing the suffering. When someone finds water and brings him a helmet full, he pours it on the ground in front of his men. If they can't all drink, he won't drink. It's leadership. It's also performative, because he still has access to emergency supplies the regular soldiers don't. The numbers are brutal. They enter with 60,000. They exit with maybe 25,000. 35,000 dead. Not from battle, from Alexander's need to prove something, from his anger at being told no. His army emerges on the other side broken, not just physically, mentally. They survived the desert, but something died in them. The last bit of loyalty, the last bit of belief that Alexander cares about them more than his own glory. They reach civilization, Carmenia, safety. Alexander throws a festival. A celebration, wine flows, music plays, like the desert didn't happen, like thousands didn't die. The soldiers go through the motions, but they're hollow, empty. And Alexander's body, it took damage too. The heat, the dehydration, the stress. His old wounds ache worse. That arrow wound from India isn't fully healed. It probably never will. The desert accelerated something that was already happening. His body breaking down. But he won't admit it. Can't admit it. He's only 32, he's got Arabia to conquer. Carthage after that. Rome someday. He doesn't have time to be weak. Doesn't have time to acknowledge that 10 years of warfare, countless wounds and heavy drinking have a price. His men see him struggling, see him winded from short walks, see him needing more wine to get through evenings, see him looking older than his years, and they wonder how much longer this can last. They reach Babylon. Finally, the heart of his empire, where he can rest, recover, maybe even go home to Macedonia. But Alexander doesn't think about rest. He thinks about what's next. Because stopping means facing what the desert proved, that he's not invincible, that geography can beat him, that his body has limits, so he doesn't stop. He plans, he dreams, he pushes forward into maps and strategies and impossible campaigns. Because if he stops moving, if he stops conquering, he might have to face the truth that the God King is dying, that all those wounds, all that drinking, all that pushing past human limits is catching up, that maybe the greatest threat to Alexander the Great isn't an enemy army, it's Alexander himself. It's June 323 BCE, Babylon. Alexander is preparing for the Arabian campaign. Ships are being built, supplies gathered, troops assembled. Everything is moving forward. Then Alexander gets invited to a party. It's thrown by one of his officers, Medius. Just a banquet. Wine, friends. Alexander goes, drinks heavily. He's been drinking heavily for years, but this night he really goes at it. The next morning he feels terrible. Not hungover, worse, fever, chills, body aches. He tries to push through. He's got campaigns to plan, an empire to run, but the fever gets worse. His doctors come. They don't know what's wrong. Fever this high, this persistent, could be anything. Malaria, typhoid, some infection from old wounds. Years of damage catching up. Alexander keeps trying to work. He's in bed, burning up, but he's giving orders, reviewing plans. His generals stand around his bed taking notes like this is normal. Like their king isn't obviously dying. Days pass. The fever doesn't break. Alexander gets weaker, stops speaking clearly. His officers ask who should rule after him, who gets the empire. He supposedly says to the strongest, or maybe to Crateros. Sources disagree, maybe he said nothing. Maybe they made it up later. His soldiers demand to see him. They've heard rumours he's dead, that his generals are hiding it. They force their way in, file past his bed. Thousands of men, some crying, some silent, watching their king, the man who conquered the world, unable to even lift his head. Roxana is there, his wife, pregnant with his child, the baby who'll be both Greek and Persian, the fusion he dreamed about. He'll never meet this child. June 10th or 11th, 323 BCE. Alexander dies. He's 32 years old, been king for 13 years, conquered the known world, and died in bed from fever like anyone else. Immediately questions explode. What killed him? Disease makes sense. Malaria was common in Babylon. The swamps bred mosquitoes. Or typhoid. Or complications from old wounds. His body was wrecked. Pick a cause. But then whispers start. Was he poisoned? That party at Medius's house. The wine. He got sick right after. Some say Antipater, his regent in Macedonia, sent poison. Alexander had been threatening to replace him. Others say his generals did it. They were tired of endless conquest. Arabia, Carthage, Rome. When does it stop? The problem? Ancient poison wouldn't work like this. Too slow, too uncertain. If you're poisoning Alexander, you make it fast. This wasn't fast. More likely. His body gave up 10 years of campaign, countless wounds, heavy drinking, the Gedrosian desert, the arrow through the lung, all of it accumulating, until a fever his body would normally fight becomes the thing that kills him. There's something almost pathetic about it. Alexander survived charging into 5-1 odds at Gaugamela, survived jumping into a city alone, survived battles that should have killed him, and he dies from fever. The gods didn't protect him, or they got bored, or there were never any gods. Within hours, the empire starts tearing apart. His generals immediately fight over pieces. Ptolemy takes Egypt, Seleucus takes the east. The unity Alexander forced is gone the moment he stops breathing. Roxana has a son, names him Alexander IV. He's king for a few years, in name only, then he gets murdered. 13 years old, killed by one of Alexander's former generals who doesn't want competition. The bloodline ends. Everything Alexander built politically falls apart. The empire fragments, but the cities survive. The cultural mixing lasts. Greek language, Greek ideas, spreading across Asia, that's his real legacy, not the empire, the culture. Here's what's haunting. Alexander achieved everything he set out to do, conquered Persia, became pharaoh, spread Greek culture, founded cities, won impossible battles, made himself a legend. And it wasn't enough. He died planning more conquests, because for Alexander there was never going to be enough. The edge of the world wasn't a place, it was a feeling he'd never reach. Proof he'd never find. He could conquer everything and still feel incomplete, still feel like he hadn't proven he was special, that the gods loved him, that his mother was right. So he died trying, died planning, died believing one more campaign would finally make him feel complete. It wouldn't have, but he ran out of time to find out. And here's the strangest part. After all that conquest, all that glory, all that effort to make himself immortal through fame, Alexander's final resting place became one of history's greatest mysteries. His body was preserved in honey, prepared for burial, ready to be taken home to Macedonia where kings belong. But someone had other plans, and what happened to Alexander's body after death might be even more bizarre than anything he did while alive. Alexander's funeral procession is supposed to go to Macedonia. That's where kings are buried, with Philip, with the ancestors. A massive wagon is built. Gold, jewels, a crystal coffin so people can see the body. It's a rolling temple, the most expensive funeral in history. The procession starts heading northwest. Then Ptolemy hijacks it. Ptolemy is one of Alexander's top generals. He's claimed Egypt, and he decides Alexander's body is too valuable to let go, a propaganda goldmine. If the great conqueror is buried in your territory, it legitimizes your rule, makes you his true successor. Ptolemy's army intercepts the funeral procession, takes the body, brings it to Egypt, first to Memphis, then to Alexandria, the city Alexander founded. They build a tomb there. Massive structure, gold sarcophagus. Macedonian kings don't get buried in Egypt, but Alexander does. The tomb becomes famous. Julius Caesar visits centuries later, looks at Alexander's body and supposedly cries, because he's 32 and hasn't conquered anything yet. Alexander conquered the world by that age. Augustus visits. Caligula supposedly steals Alexander's breastplate to wear it. Roman emperors make pilgrimages. Then the tomb disappears. Sometime between the 3rd and 4th centuries, all records stop. The tomb is just gone. Maybe an earthquake destroyed it. Maybe a tsunami. Maybe looters. Maybe early Christians who didn't like pagans worshipping a dead conqueror. Nobody knows. Archaeologists have been searching for it for 200 years, digging all over Alexandria. Nothing. The tomb of the most famous conqueror in history is lost. His body could be under a parking lot, under a building, under the Mediterranean. We have no idea. That's Alexander's final joke. He spent his life trying to be immortal, building cities with his name, winning battles that would be remembered forever, spreading his legend across continents. And we can't even find his grave. His empire fractured immediately. The cities lasted. Alexandria in Egypt became one of the greatest cities in the ancient world. The library, the lighthouse, learning and culture for centuries. Other Alexandrias survived too. His name stamped across the map exactly like he wanted. The cultural fusion worked better than the political unity. Greek ideas mixed with Persian, Egyptian, Indian cultures. That Hellenistic blend influenced everything that came after. Philosophy, art, science. Alexander's real legacy isn't the battles, it's the mixing, the spreading of ideas across borders, but the man himself? Lost. His son murdered, his bloodline erased, his tomb vanished, his empire carved up by generals who pretended to honour him while destroying everything he built. Here's the question nobody can answer. Was Alexander great? Or was he just successful? He won every battle, changed the world, made himself a legend, but he also murdered his friends, destroyed cities, got thousands killed in a desert out of spite, died at 32 still chasing something he'd never find. Maybe that's what makes him fascinating. He's not a hero, not a villain. He's human ambition pushed to the absolute limit. A boy who believed he was a god and spent his life trying to prove it, who achieved the impossible and found it wasn't enough, who conquered the world and died unsatisfied. The mystery of his death, of his tomb, of what really drove him, that's fitting. Because Alexander the Great was always half mystery, half human, half myth. Son of a king or son of Zeus, brilliant tactician or lucky gambler, noble hero or brutal tyrant, we still can't decide. Maybe we never will. What we know is this. A kid from northern Greece became Pharaoh of Egypt, king of Persia and conqueror of the known world before 30. He spread Greek culture from the Mediterranean to India. He founded cities that lasted millennia. He changed history forever. And then he died in bed, got stolen by a friend and disappeared from history. Somewhere under Alexandria, maybe, is the body of the greatest conqueror who ever lived. Preserved in honey, waiting in darkness, exactly where he never wanted to be. Forgotten, lost, just another mystery time swallowed whole. These historical deep dives reveal the wild humanity behind famous names. If you're craving more stories that make the past feel alive and relatable, you've found your channel. Rest well and let the echoes of history carry you into sleep.